GALP.
Hey guys, and welcome to GALP. I'm super excited to discuss this game. I've been waiting for what feels like ages, although it's been a couple of months since I found out about this game. Before we continue, thanks to Neonhive. I recently had the chance to experience Slopecrashers because of them, and you know what? It's an awesome game. It's a super fast, expertly tuned arcade snowboarding racer, reminiscent of games like SSX and Mario Kart. Time to crash into our disclaimer. For you new folks, GALP is a weekly gaming discussion podcast under the GALP Podcast Network. We talk about all sorts of games, from big AAA titles all the way to awesome indie games. But our forte is Japanese games, so expect that a lot. We can be found anywhere where you listen to your podcasts, including Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and now on YouTube. Whilst you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star review. And remember, if you want to join in on the fun, then follow us on all of our socials: Blue Sky, TikTok, Insta, and X, all at GAL Podcasts. Not the best transition, but you know what, guys? I'm trying my best. I'm a little bit rusty. All right? Anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk about the game. I only found out about this game recently on Twitter. A friend of mine had retweeted a post from Neonhive showcasing some gameplay, and I knew straight away that it was right up my alley. I know we usually focus on Japanese titles, but I want to give some context here. PS2 is my all-time favorite console. Very nostalgic. I spent most of my childhood playing games like Dynasty Warriors and SSX. Hell, I love SSX so much that I bought an Xbox Series X just to be able to play the upscaled version of SSX 3 in 4K. Let's be honest, SSX 3 wasn't even the best one. All right, you can argue with me in the comments, guys, but that's just my opinion. I wish Microsoft did the same for SSX Tricky and SSX On Tour. Although, you know what, not many people like On Tour, I get that. But it was a great game. We might talk about it on the future episode of the podcast, right? The point I was trying to make was that I miss SSX and games like it. And Slopecrashers really scratches that itch. This game isn't SSX, and I think it would be very unfair to compare it to SSX. A lot of reviews I've seen mention that this game is a mix between SSX and Mario Kart, and I do see that. It is a little bit upsetting to reduce it to that though. Like how everyone calls any Dynasty Warriors game a brainless button masher. Sorry, I just had to sneak in a Dynasty Warriors reference there. There is a lot of things that I think SSX can learn from Slopecrashers. So EA Sports, if you're listening, take notes. Split screen co-op is in this game. This was a staple of the PS2 era in any racing game and in any sort of fighting game and hack and slash, and any game pretty much in the PS2 era had split screen co-op. And guess what? That wasn't included in SSX 2012. In fact, we kind of had to wait for it to come. I'm not sure if they actually brought it back. I mean, we had to wait ages for online multiplayer even on SSX 2012, which was interesting. We're not talking about SSX here. There's multiple game modes in Slopecrashers as well, including racing, trick events, time attack style mode, where you basically race against a ghost for the best time. Laps. This is another thing, and I think this is very interesting. We haven't seen that in any sort of snowboarding game. Yeah, actually, no, that's a lie. We've seen it in SSX, I think SSX 1 and SSX 2 in Tokyo Megaplex, right? Because Tokyo Megaplex was interesting because there was like a little fan at the bottom that would lift you and your snowboarder up, allowing for laps. But Slopecrashers has a very cool and smart implementation, which I've never seen in any snowboarding game. Basically, when you hit the end of a stage, there are helicopters waiting for you at the finish line, and they take you back to the start of the track. Very smart, right? Funnily enough, I was a little bit dumb and I didn't know this, and I was a bit confused why I went from first to last. I was like, what's going on? I was first, and what's happened? How come the stage hasn't ended? You actually need to board the helicopter to start a new lap. I didn't know this. No one warned me. But it was actually quite interesting. When I saw that, I was like, wow, these guys really take a lot of attention to detail, and that's something I would like to see in future games. Slopecrashers uses items, much like any other arcade racing game, like Mario Kart or Crash Nitro Kart, and it's really nice and interesting, and it adds a new dynamic to snowboarding games. However, At times, I feel like this does get a little bit annoying, and I would like it if there was a mode that didn't allow you to use items. So it would basically be down to you and your skill on the slopes. Finally, one thing that caught me off guard for a snowboarding game is the scenery, and I think this is a really interesting thing, and I'm glad to say that Slopecrashers is one of the most scenically diverse snowboarding games out there, as you get to race on snowy peaks, within cities, forests, and deserts. And yes, that doesn't make sense, but who cares? It's a video game, you know? And those weird and wonderful stages were truly a highlight for me. Exploring those out of bound parts, taking shortcuts, and let's be real, some of those shortcuts don't really always pay off, right? You need to sort of be a little bit more skilled to take the shortcuts, and the game rewards you for that. And sometimes if you're not skilled, sometimes, you know, look, all right? I'm not the most skilled. I haven't played a snowboarding game in ages, and those shortcuts were very difficult for me to pull off, so I didn't really use them. Some shortcuts require you to use your parachute, which is similar to the wingsuit in SSX 2012. It's a really nice implementation. It does kind of annoy me a little bit because, like, sometimes I don't want to use little gimmicks like that, right? Sometimes I just want pure snowboarding fun, and it would be nice if there was some sort of pure mode, if that makes sense, like a mode without items. I did already mention this, but it is quite an important thing to me. A mode without items or use of a wingsuit. And I know you can basically say, no, I don't want a wingsuit, and that's fine, but you know, anyway, these are the sort of things that overall I would personally love to see in a future SSX game. Not that EA would produce something like that, you know, but Slopecrashers is a prime example that people still yearn for games like this. And honestly, I love the idea behind this game. It's incredibly fun, and it reminds me of a simpler time. However, there is one thing that I think needs improving, and that is the soundtrack. With this being an indie game, I can imagine that the music was most likely produced by the dev team, which makes sense, right? However, I feel that the soundtrack is not appropriate for this game. It sounds a little bit goofy. One can argue that it's relevant for this style of game, but even since the PS2 days, music has been incredibly important for immersion in snowboarding and co-op racing games. For example, SSX Tricky's Snow Dream, Shake What Your Mama Gave You, would play, and you'd feel the hype coursing through your veins. It was motivating, right? You'd feel like you want to win this race at all costs. Or, for example, in SSX 3, on the peak of the mountain, most often than not, there was no music being played at all. So it was just you and the mountain. You would feel a little bit scared. You'd feel anxious and all sorts of other emotions. Music is a key tool in any media form to create emotions, to manipulate emotions, and it's very much needed in this game. More often than not, whilst playing this game, I had to turn down the BGM and replace with my own SSX playlist on Spotify, just so I can feel hype, you know? Because the game is hype. The game is hype. The game is great. The music lets it down a little bit. And part of me thinks that I'm not too sure how the music direction was within this game. Like, did they want to go for like this sort of kiddie theme? I don't know, right? Even Mario Kart has like orchestral music. And I get that. Once again, this might have been done solely by the development team. And from what I know, the development team is incredibly small. I think it's like one person, maybe two people. So budgets and licensing and things like that kind of come into play. So I understand the sort of reasoning behind it. And to be fair with you, it's a little bit nitpicky on my end, and I have to mention it because there's not many faults that I've actually found with this game. The music is a big deal for me, but you know, the fact that it's only the music kind of goes to show that this is a really good game. Another thing, and speaking of nitpicks, another thing that I would have loved to see this game have is a Switch port. The game is currently on Steam, and that's absolutely fantastic, especially for an indie title. But I feel that there's a demographic for this game that might not own a PC or a Steam Deck, but owns a Nintendo Switch. Even I'm part of that demographic. It's often a hassle for me to turn on my massive PC and to update Windows and the drivers and blah de blah de blah de blah de blah. I just want to play the game, all right? And I guess that's not the fault with the game. It's more my laziness not wanting to play on PC, but I stand by the opinion that this game needs to be on Switch. It's perfect for handheld play. And if you own something like a Steam Deck or an ROG Ally or whatever sort of handheld PC, this game is perfect. And in fact, that was something that was mentioned by Neonhive. They mentioned it in the press releases that this is a perfect title for handheld play. And to be fair with you, yeah, it is. But I want to play with more people that aren't just PC players. I was given 2 codes for this game and I was told, hey, share one with your friend. And I know this sounds a bit lame. I don't have friends that play on PC. Most of my friends play on consoles and, you know, they might have multiple consoles, right? They'll have a handheld like the Switch and they will have a PS5 or Xbox or whatever. And my friends that did have PCs were not really interested in this type of game. So they didn't really take up on my offer. The ones who were interested didn't have a PC or didn't have a Steam Deck. That's why I was thinking, let's see a Switch port. And I understand, once again, this is an indie title. It's not as easy to, you know, publish and find publishers and put this out on the Switch. Everything kind of has a cost. So my best advice is that if you want a Switch port, or if you're someone that is interested in something like that, make this game a success. Buy it on Steam anyway. You know what I mean? I know it sounds so dumb, but like, have a Steam account, buy the game on Steam, support the game, even if you're not going to play it, and just push. I'd like to see a Switch port and I'd love to support it. And yeah, I think that would be great. Having it on a console like that, we might actually end up seeing more attention, as you can imagine, more sort of quote unquote casual players, people who have, I don't know, people that transitioned over from the PS2 days. Like there's a lot of people that I know that were console gamers from the PS2 and they don't have PCs, but they have the Nintendo Switch because there's a lot of remakes and blah, 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 blah. So I kind of want to see that again make its way to the Switch. And yeah, overall, I really did enjoy this game. There's so many fun little quirks here and there. There's a lot of customization in terms of boards, which is very kind of reminiscent of SSX. And I know I said I wasn't going to compare it to SSX. To be fair with you, half the episode was just me comparing it to SSX, but it is something that EA can learn from, which is kind of weird because it's an indie title, right? Why should EA look towards an indie title? But it's kind of impressive that this was done by an independent developer and they've managed to make a snowboarding game that is better than the recent offerings from EA. And wow, I don't really know what to say. It's really got everything. Like it scratches that SSX itch. It makes me want to play those older games, and it actually kind of makes me feel sad and in a nostalgic way that there isn't any more SSX games. But you know, I'm actually pretty excited to play this game even more and to see where it goes, and hopefully it has more support in the future. And if I could give a suggestion, I would like to see more of that diversity. You know, like I want to see where they can go from there. Can we have snowboarding on the moon, right? Can we have snowboarding on Neptune or something like that? You know what I mean? Like on the rings of Neptune. That would be kind of cool. That would be kind of badass. I would like to see more weird and wonderful and quirky tracks from this game, more boards, more characters as well, more tricks. This was another thing that I absolutely loved in the game. Tricks. Hell yeah. The tricks were just so fun. I was like, yo, let's get more of that. I would love to see more tricks, maybe a trick book similar to SSX. And you know what? I'm kind of just suggesting I want a new SSX game and I want this guy to make it. But no, I do want to see more tricks and I want to see more out there, more theatrics. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just want to see more theatrics overall. And yeah, that being said, go and buy Slopecrashers. Buy it. If you own a PC, if you own a Steam Deck, if you're a fan of titles like SSX or like Mario Kart, go for it. I don't think you'd regret it at all. I haven't regretted it. And in fact, I actually went out of my way, right? I'm not even normally on the Neonhive press list, but I reached out to them out of enthusiasm because I really wanted to do an episode for this game. And I'm glad that I did. And I'm glad that the episode is out. And I'm glad that we got to talk about it. If you guys are interested, I did reach out to Neonhive and I reached out to the developer. And I'm interested in actually interviewing the developer. So if you guys have any questions for the dev team, please leave them in the comments and we will put them in the episode. Of course, they might say no, or they might say, hey, you know, this might not be an appropriate question or whatever. But I'll try my best. Put your questions in the comments, whether that's on Spotify, on YouTube, or whatever. And when I come to do the episode with the dev team, then I'll ask them your questions as well. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We'll be back next week to talk about Shin Sangoku Dynasty Warriors 10. Sorry, not 10, Origins. I don't know why I'm calling it 10, but there you go. Shin Sangoku Origins. Okay, we're back for that. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode and we'll see you next week.